Hey everyone, Data here, and welcome to my NHL 23 franchise mode wishlist, aka you could probably kind of call the video everything wrong with franchise mode or things to fix in franchise mode, but it is my wishlist headed into NHL 23. NHL 22 is wrapping up. NHL 23 will be dropping in about 5 to 6 weeks from now, so it's time to get an idea of what do we want to be seeing in NHL 23, and if we don't get it in 23, what do we want to see in NHL 24? And so on. Obviously, if anyone from EA is watching this, it's a bit too late, but we can have our fingers crossed for things that we want to see moving forward. So this is a rather lengthy video. It's a comprehensive list of things. It goes all the way from the it would be nice things to these, imperative, this has to be included ASAP sort of things. So you can follow the categories that I've made down in the chapters of this video. You could scroll along if you would like. Some new changes, stuff like events and tournaments, line chemistry, coaches, my recommendations for how to fix it. I've played a lot of franchise mode, and especially I've simulated through a lot of franchise mode, and I've come to a point where I think I know that there are a few things that have to be fixed, and I'm sure you do as well. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. What do you agree with, disagree with, and what do you want to see yourself? As I begin this video, thank you to many people over on the EA franchise mode subreddit, many people in my Discord server who gave their suggestions as well, and just various content creators who I've been watching and listening to over the years. All of the suggestions that I've been reading, listening to, experiencing myself have been synthesized into this video. So without further ado, as I was saying, some of these changes are more for fun, some are for quality of life, but regardless, as a lover of franchise mode, I just want to see some of these things happen. Glitches that have been in the mode year after year become more and more tiresome. And I don't mean to sound like a complainer, because I do indeed love franchise mode, but it's frustrating when it could be so much better with a few tweaks. But I'm fighting because I love it. As I said, this list is comprehensive, but a good number of them are getting to a point where it's almost imperative. And many of these suggestions I'll be making today are already things that exist in games like NBA 2K, MLB The Show, FIFA, etc. They've existed for years, some even a decade plus. So there's no excuse for not having, maybe even I'd say the majority of these, but at the very least, some of the biggest ones that I'll be bringing up. So first and foremost, before I go into different categories of changes, of things that we already know, like trading and free agency and stuff like that, I'd like to cover some of the global changes that would include different screens / menus that could or should be added. I call these, quote, new changes because they would be things that we don't currently have, but may have already had at one point in the past. So first up, I would love a GM tracker. When you go and look at the league here, you don't really, in the league tab, you don't see anything. You have settings, record book, and there's nowhere to see your personal record as a general manager. My all-time record as a GM for each team that I've been with, a list of transactions that I've made, the awards that my players have won, all things that should be and previously have been tracked. GM status, GM awards, things like that. That is really fun. And for those of us who enjoy simulating 20 plus years, should not have to keep spreadsheets of all of these things. Even a sort of recap after the 25 years would be nice, instead of the "you have reached the end of franchise mode" screen that you get after 25 years. That's it. You can't go and see a recap of anything. No, just "you have finished." That's it. Not even a congratulations. You reached the end. And furthermore, why the 25-year limit? Let's shoot for 40. Shout out to anyone who got that reference, Sweet Life on Deck. But let's shoot for 40. Why the 25-year limit? Why that magic number? Why can't I go for 30, 50 years? I'm not saying 100, but why the limit at 25? Where players who I'm drafting, if I, let's say I'm in like year 5, 6, 7, which most players get to that, I won't be able to see that player get retired, even if he becomes a legend in my franchise, because, it's going to be less than 20 seasons if he's have a nice long career. So also, when speaking of franchise tracking, we need to have a screen that shows you how each player came to your organization. This is something that's in MLB The Show, and it's amazing. Did they come by draft, by trade, free agency, whatever? If I acquired a 6th round pick in a throwaway trade 6 years ago, and that player went on to become a superstar, I want to be able to go back and remember and read what that trade was, because I'm definitely not going to remember that when, multiple years down the road. Just a history. How did this player get into my organization? When was it? What was the trade that I made? A trade history of sorts. That would be amazing. On top of that, keeping with the theme of things that I've seen in MLB The Show, how about providing the ability to user any game for any team? So for example, if I'm eliminated from the postseason or didn't make the postseason, why can't I go to the calendar and check out, let's say it's Vegas in the Cup final or whatever, why can't I go to Vegas's calendar and now I can watch or even play, but at the very least watch Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final to see how a player is doing in a career simulation, to watch the events unfold, etc. Even if you want to restrict me from playing, at least let me watch what's going on, so that it's not like you have to live under a rock once you're eliminated and just, oh, by the way, this team won the Stanley Cup. And building off of watching games, I'm giving you a lot of stuff and suggestions right off the bat. It's going to be thing after thing after thing. I've thought this out very well. Building off of watching games, adding a game log to games that have passed in the calendar simulation would be huge. This is one of the things that I see as one of the top 3 to 5 things that we need to have in franchise mode. If I simulate to a date, I want to be able to go back to that date, click on it, and say game log. Not that I have to slow sim the game itself. I have to go simulate to this day. Owner, thank you. There's a lot of pop-up menus. And this is something I'm going to get to later on. There are so many pop-up menus. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I get to the game. I have to sim the game. I have to wait. Ah, now the game goes. I press finish game right away. Oh, wow. 8-0 loss. Wait. And then go to stats. Wait. Ah, there it is. Now I can see the stats for that game. What if I just want to simulate 5 games in a row and say, I want to go back to see that one game where we lost 8-0. Just, one game in particular. This is something that's in like every sports game. I don't know why we can't go back and see a game log. So I don't need to constantly go back and forth the stats page or slow sim games I want more information on. I can just sim the whole week and then give a quick glance if there's games that I want to go and see more in depth. Most notably, this 8-0 loss. I would want to know more about it. Also, while we are in the calendar, how about the speed of simulation? I don't know if it's just because of PS4 versus PS5 or what, but we need the simulation to be faster and less pop-ups. This is something that you'll understand if you've done long-term simulations like I have, like career simulations, and that's why the career sims take so long. Even when you turn off all the pop-ups that you can, you turn off the trades, the waivers, the coaches getting fired and all that, there's still the central scouting rankings, the pro scout recommendations, the December 1st RFA warning, contract limit warning, and so on and so on and so on. It is a huge waste of time. Just want to simulate 2 weeks. Set the promotions, auto assign. Okay, let's start going. Super slow through each day. On MLB The Show 20, bing, bang, bong, bing, bang, bong, bing, bang, bong. Game log, easy, accessible, finished. This to go 2 weeks, I just did 2 months in MLB The Show, for example. And this is during the preseason. Sometimes during the heart of the season, it takes even longer. Trades are coming up. It's just a mess. So there's just a little example of how slow it is. It may not seem slow, but when you're simulating multiple seasons, you're sitting here for such a long time. And again, while I'm on the trail of simulation, I hopped into a game right here to illustrate something. When you're slow simming, I was slow simming a game and I jumped into it with 2 minutes to go, now a minute and a half to go or whatever. When I jump into the game, elements from the slow simulation should not be forgotten now that I go into the live simulation. So for example, if a goalie was pulled, if Carey Price was pulled and Jake Allen was in nets, I would start the game and either Carey Price would be in nets and at the first whistle Jake Allen would come back into the net, or it would just straight up be Carey Price. It wouldn't be the game starts and now Jake Allen is there because Price got pulled. But regardless of that, players will also have noticeably less time on ice if you jump into a game from a slow sim, thus altering player growth and punishing the development of players, of users who like to jump in more often than not. So if I go to game stats and click on team stats, it seems as though for player stats, I've seen it sometimes, at other times not so much, so it's not a huge deal. But we've played about, 58.5 minutes of the game so far, and if I go to the goalies, it shows me that Carey Price has only played 40 minutes, when really he's played for 58 minutes. So now, my goalies have their goals against average hurt, because instead of letting in 1 goal over 60 minutes, it'll be or let's say, for example, 4 goals over 60 minutes, and then I'll be 4 goals over 40 minutes, which changes the goals against average, and thus it'll be an inflated goals against average, less ice time, and just overall hurt the player's growth. This has been an issue since at least NHL 14 from what I was reading, so I'm not really hoping this will be changed magically for NHL 23 when it's been there for so long. But just to note, this has been an issue. When you hop into a game from the slow sim, time on ice is usually messed up, at least for the goalies. And my final suggestion for this category would be, how about having an option of receiving monthly or quarterly updates? In NHL 07, for example, you would get, mail for weekly hot or cold streaks, and it can get a bit much at sometimes, but why not a monthly roundup type of thing that may be found in the message center? If I go to the leagues and I go to the message center, activity feed or whatever, why can't I get some updates about the league itself, as opposed to just great performance from Kailer Yamamoto last night, 4 points? I want to know a bit more. And, on top of that, can we get some more generic names aside from just hockey analyst, the same random guy in this stock photo whose name is hockey analyst? Can we not, even if it's Joe Smith, I would much prefer Joe Smith than hockey analyst. Same picture, same guy, same name all the time. Why can't I get at the end of the month, after the last 10 games, blah, 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 not just single game reports, which I don't really care about reading as much. I want to see those long-term trends. And, on top of it, this is just a general suggestion. The menu speed is so slow and laggy. Press, 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 press. There, that's how long it took. Like if I sat here and I went slow enough, it would go wherever I want it to go. But as soon as I start going, okay, up, central, click, now wait, okay, go over to team back, no, I want to go back to the trade screen, I press R1 right now, then I go and wait, and I 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 wait, okay, down, 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 right, left, right, left. See, it's a bit hard when you're not seeing my fingers press at the same time, but there is a noticeable delay in the action being executed, as well as sometimes you'll click on whatever you want, propose trade, you click X, then you click X a third time, and oh, now it finally goes. So it's hard to illustrate if you haven't been the person playing it, because you can't see my fingers right now, but trust me, and it's not just me, it is so many people saying the menus are so sticky, it's incredible. So that would be a great fix, and this is a just game fix, not a mode fix, this is a game fix that I will leave you with right there in that section. So it's not just about the brand new screens, the menus, etc. My next category is kind of like a subsection of this, as it would be new, but it goes more into the gameplay than management. And that section is events/tournaments. So first off, why not get a little bit of the World Juniors mixed in? Now that the IIHF game modes exist, why not include them during the season? I understand you can't get the real American prospects or whatever, but we're not talking about that. I'm talking about years down the road when they're all generated prospects. It's not even that we have to play the tournament, and if it's too hard to make it happen while NHL and AHL games are going on, whatever. But how about it just happens and you can get the stats on how your prospects did afterwards? Why not that? The game modes exist, the teams exist, it's there. Why can't it be integrated as a sort of report? Oh, every whatever December it happens. By the way, Canada won gold, and your prospect who's on the team, here's the stats from whatever. Obviously, there's a sophisticated way to do it, but I don't know why it can't be included, especially that it's a game mode now. Furthermore, the Winter Classic. This has been in previous games and now it's gone. Why not just make a generic outdoor arena and 2 random teams play against each other every January 1st? It would be a fun touch of added realism. Then, it's too much to randomize the games every year. It might be the same teams that are glitching and always getting it. But at least it would be there. And that would go into what I said earlier about being able to watch the games of other teams. If your team is lucky enough to get selected for the Winter Classic, then you go to that generic arena. Even if you're the Anaheim Ducks in California, you go to that generic outdoor winter whatever Wonderland arena. So Winter Classic being included would be a great touch. Maybe even the user team gets it every January 1st. Who cares? And the last thing for events and tournaments would be the All-Star Game. Absolutely no excuse for this to have been removed since it was in so many NHL games prior. At this point, we should even be asking for a skills competition as well, which would be great, but unfortunately we're back to square one, begging just to have an all-star game. It's been there in so many NHLs. If your player was so good in the stats of whatever, in the scoring according to the league, whatever, and they're in the Eastern or the Western Conference, they get put on an automated team, and you can play or watch that game. I'm not saying you need to make a sophisticated system of how fast the fastest skater and the rules and the target shooting, whatever. Just a fun all-star game. There's no stakes attached to it at all. It would be a great addition, and again, another touch of realism. You have the all-star break every season, and you get to check out if your players are there. And whether or not they are, you can play it, or even forget playing it. Playing it would be great, but at least put it in. So moving on from events and tournaments now, I'm going through some of what we already have in franchise mode. I'm going to comment upon how it may be tweaked due to glitches, oversight, or just downright confusion. So the first thing I want to look at is line chemistry. If I go into the edit line screen, again, so long for it to open up, I cut out like 2 seconds. Every time I do anything in franchise mode, when I'm recording videos, I switch between screens. You don't know it, but I'm cutting out 2 seconds every time. That saves me minutes of recording at the end of the video. So inline chemistry, it's gotten better. I gotta say, it's gotten better since it was first introduced, but it should be able to adjust to your coach and or the teammates, line mates, whatever, over time. It's a small request, and this is a small fix. This is one of my top 5 things that should be fixed. There's nothing much more to add to it. The line chemistry system is okay. It's just annoying when players who are amazing together in the real world would get like a -1 on chemistry, for example, while I could go and acquire 3 brand new players and they have an instant +5. My player who doesn't work well with the coach or the player to the coach or the coach to the player, they should kind of become malleable over time and be able to interact. Unless the chemistry between the two of them is super low, that's understandable. But if the players spend enough time together, despite sorry, you're a two-way forward, you can't have chemistry. Brad Marchand, and Patrice Bergeron, you're two-way forwards. No, you should still be able to get the chemistry. And I understand that's why the X factors go into chemistry and stuff like that. But then it becomes frustrating. You have to constantly be adding and removing X factors to get the chemistry. The system could be tweaked a little bit and be a lot better, but it has gotten better since it was first established. Small request, small fix. The subject of line chemistry then leads into coaches. I have a lot to say about coaches because they are very broken. First, the coaches themselves. If I go to the coaching staff, I went left, down, down. I did left, down, down. Look at that. Look at that. It just went left. Then it was like a 2-second pause and it went down 1. That's how slow it is coming out of screens. So first, the coaches themselves. Okay, so if a coach is listed as an NHL associate coach, let's say I want to go hire a coach. One of them is listed as NHL associate coach. This guy right here, Belmar. He should not be rejecting my offer because he doesn't like the role that I'm offering him. If I send him a contract and I do an interview with him and he likes the market, he likes the team, I give him 8 years, $5 million a season, and I tell him you will be an NHL associate coach because your role is associate coach. He should not be rejecting because he doesn't like the role. If he doesn't like the market, the roster, the staff, fine, whatever. But if he's rejecting solely because of the role, then why is that his listed role? Also, there are no coaches who are listed as goalie coaches. You'll see this NHL head, associate, assistant, and same for the AHL. There's no NHL goalie or AHL goalie coach, yet I would like to get an NHL goalie coach. So I need to go and hire an assistant coach, which is already the lowest one, and it forces me to overpay an assistant coach who will have to take on a lower role as goalie coach. So therefore, any goalie coach at his lowest is at least an assistant coach in quality. So they're frustrated, I'm frustrated, I lose more of my budget if I'm playing with owner mode on. So it's just, I'm going to get into the game of musical chairs, but it's such a big game of musical chairs. And if I can sort by offense, I can sort by defense. Why can I not sort by their team fit? If I can go to their screen and see 51% team fit, 55, 56, why can I not sort by their team fit? Because that would eliminate a lot of players, a lot of coaches who I'm not going to be hiring. Furthermore, we also need a better understanding of how coaches affect our players. Yes, my coach has A+ teaching, for example. That's great. But now when I go over to the player growth screen, why can't I see how, hold on, down, 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 and then now, like, that's how long it takes, the menus. When I go to the progress report screen, why can I not see how the coach has impacted my player's growth over time? It's just, it doesn't make it very immersive. If I see a Carey Price, his natural growth, his statistical growth, his morale growth, if my coach is A+ teaching or whatever, why can I not see the growth that my player has had thanks to my coach? I just kind of have to hire a coach down, 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 man. I have to hire a coach and hope that they have a good effect on my players, but I can't really see it. I need to have a better understanding of that. It needs to be more transparent. Now I get into my final point, the coaching positions themselves. This is an incredibly frustrating game of musical chairs. In the NHL, you can have a coach fill in as interim head coach. Let's say I fire my NHL goalie coach, and I go ahead and demote this guy to goalie coach and this guy to associate coach, and now this guy, I want him to be my interim NHL head coach. Now when I go and hire a new NHL head coach, my interim NHL head coach will automatically be bumped down to NHL associate coach. This is not the case in the AHL, where you cannot have an interim head coach, but also cannot leave the staff management screen unless a head coach is named. So if I fire my AHL goalie coach, and I do the exact same thing, demote him to AHL goalie coach, demote this guy to AHL associate coach, I cannot leave the screen until that staff slot is filled. And I also can't, if I try to promote him, I can't promote him to anything but AHL head coach. So if I want a new AHL head coach, I can't hire an AHL head coach. I'll have to hire an AHL associate coach or an NHL goalie coach. So that forces me to fire one of those two coaches I just said, hire my actual AHL head coach for that position, fire my AHL head coach placeholder, and then promote or demote the coach I actually want and just hired to the AHL head coach position, then go out and rehire the position that I just fired to make all that happen. So basically I lose staff, I mess up staff chemistry, all that just because how broken this system is for no reason. And on top of that, once a coach is fired / left unsigned and goes back to the staff free agency hire staff page, all of their tendencies switch. So if I really like a coach who had a great fit on my first line and power play and all that, but he didn't re-sign soon enough and now he went back on July 1st and now I had to rehire him, or I had to fire him to play musical chairs, whatever, I can't even rehire him the next day because now that coach is a completely different person. He's no longer the same coach I just had. So all that to say, catch my breath here, it's just a mess with the coaching. My goodness. Whew, but keeping on the theme of line chemistry and such, we now move on to editing players. If I go to the league tab, I can go to edit player. It takes so long, but I can click on edit player. Now in NHL 22, when I go to edit a player, I cannot change player types, assumedly so that I cannot cheese line chemistry by changing player types and stuff like playmaker, sniper, power forward. But we are allowed to add X factors, which do the same thing for line chemistry. So EA needs to either make the line chemistry more complex or just allow us to play how we want in this offline mode that does not affect anyone but myself. I should be able to change anything at any time. Drafted players' names, their attributes, their player type, their potential. Take a page out of MLB The Show's book. I'm not just, I can edit most of those things before starting the save file, but if a player is really good and his potential is not reflecting that, or vice versa, I want to go in, hey, you had a great, crazy season, I love you, you're my favorite player, I'm going to make you high franchise. You had a horrible season, but you're still elite for some reason, Drouin, not to pick on Drouin, you had a terrible year, I don't see you as having a top 6 potential anymore, I'm going to drop you down to top 9. I could do that before the season starts, the save file begins, but if I'm already a few seasons in, I should be able to change those things after, aside from just the X factors. I'll get into the X factors shortly because now I'm moving on to the theme of the players themselves. So as it self-proclaimed, the category is called the players themselves. We should be able to have progressive traits. So if I go over to the morale screen, I want to see guys who are good, who are leaders, who are good for the locker room, stuff like that. I'm not someone who usually plays with morale, but waiting so long, and I press down, 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 right, left, down, and it's jumping over things. Morale. If I go to morale, the same traits that are assigned to players at 17 should not be there until they're 40. So if I see who's neutral, leader, neutral, anyone a bad no, okay, so just neutrals and leaders, Gallagher and Price. Well, why can't I see other things being developed over time? If I draft a player who says that they're loyal, how do I know that a kid who's trouble at 17 or 18 is going to be trouble for his whole career? It should be that loyalty develops after multiple years on a team. Bad locker room presence develops after being buried in the lineup for an extended period, etc. This could affect contract negotiations, wanting to stay closer to home, desiring a certain market size, etc., etc., etc. So let's just say that these player traits should not just be one and done, you keep them forever. They should be progressive. Not just if you have morale turned on, it should also just be things that go in, like I said, to contract negotiations. Traits should be separate from morale. My next point about the players themselves would be X factors being added or removed over time. As I just said previously, we're able to add and remove X factors, but they should be automatically done so. I'm not sure what the formula would be. Maybe, for example, the top 10 in block shots are given X factor, or the top 10 in face-off percentage are given Y X factor. Maybe I'm asking too much, but just something of starting to lose them at a certain age. Like, why should I still have wheels? If my guy has 2-star skating at 39 years of age, does he really still have wheels? You know, it becomes a really long process to have to manually add or remove for the entire league if you want the league to be balanced. Like, for example, in NHL 22, guys like Zegras or Jack Hughes have no X factors. So by the time they're 90 plus overall, at like 23 years of age, they still and never will have any X factors. There must be some sort of way to tweak that. I'm not sure what the formula would be, but there has to be some way to tweak that. Moving now to another idea, which would be player training. When thinking about attributes, if I can't manually change attributes, then I should be at least to train my players so that the ones that are really underdeveloped can get developed, especially with so many wonky prospects where a guy has 98 slap shot power but 62 wrist shot power. I should be able to change things and not just have to deal with that for the next 20 seasons. It could be active, like doing drills in FIFA, or even passive, like just a setting in MLB The Show. But either way, I should be able to choose what a player works on in addition to their growth as the season goes on. This would allow me to improve my centerman, who has 65 faceoffs, my 6'4" power forward, who has 3-star physical, my defensive defenseman, who has 2-star skating, etc. Additionally, you can maybe even put a cap on training. In FIFA, it's a bit too crazy. You know, guys who are at 50 overall can be 99s in a few years. Obviously, being able to get my 6'5" defenseman from 2-star to 5-star skating in one season would be insane. But why not allow for some growth if I, as the GM, choose to focus heavily upon it? So I'll kind of switch gears from player growth and X factors and stuff like that. Keeping on the players themselves, though, player cards. When I go to see a player, we just saw the player cards before, but I'll show it to you again. I can click on the player. I see his potential, his role. I see his stats, his overall, his attributes, coach satisfaction, morale, no morale log to look at, and his contract info. Why not also have being able to see the awards that he's won over his career, track his awards, and possibly even his place in franchise history? In the record book, we only see who the #1 goals all time is, #1 penalty minutes all time is. But why can't I see that this player is 7th in all-time franchise assists, for example? Not only the leader should be recognized. We could maybe even have a screen that has all of the all-time player stats laid out like season stats. You know, like the season stats screen, now it's an all-time stats screen. That would be great. And while speaking about awards, just one little note I'll make when looking at the awards themselves at the end of every season, we always just see who the winner of the award was. Why not also see the finalists for that award? You know, a little thing, move the award up a little, and then in the bottom right corner, I see who the finalists were. I don't know, find a way to do it. In MLB The Show, that's a great way to see that, okay, my pitcher didn't win the Cy Young. He had such a great year. What? He didn't win the Cy Young? But he finished second. At least you can see that. So finalists for awards would be another great thing, and that goes into my probably top 5 things I would love to see as soon as possible, because it would be an easy fix as well. Keeping on the players, Oh, huge one. This goes in the top 5, I think, as well. It might be even top 6, 7 at the end. Give generated faces to generated prospects. Even if it's a bank of like 5 generated faces, anything would be better than the gray silhouettes that we've been dealing with for years that players inexplicably still have. Generated coaches do not have it. These are real players, Shane Wright and everybody. Let's say I just go to a random generated guy who's not Ludwig over here. This guy Ludwig, Bruce Ludwig, he's just random. I don't know anything about his face. You know, cool. He has a cool gray hair. He has a big beard. Stuff like that's fun to see. Even if it's a 17-year-old, that would be fun for story. Meanwhile, these generated coaches all have their own face. It doesn't make sense. Again, we saw it in the higher staff screen. The menu, you're seeing firsthand how laggy this menu is. If you could see my fingers smashing the controller right now. There's no excuse for the coaches to have them, but the players to not have them. In Be a Pro, my one player has it. Why can't that same technology be put into franchise mode? All these coaches have generated faces next to them. And keeping on the generated or drafted players, another suggestion would be to have the option to include female players. Franchise mode has female coaches, female scouts. That's great, but why not add the possibility for female players too? It could be a setting that each player can control by turning on or off, and then even have a low, medium, or high tendency of appearing in the draft. That way, those who want it can have it, and those who don't won't. Another instance of allowing us to decide what we want in our own offline save file. To finish off my thoughts on the players, I'll leave you with the next category, which is injuries. First off, adding the ability to LTIR a player would be huge. If I have a guy out for whatever, 2, 3, 4 months, even add the ability for longer term injuries. I feel like there's sometimes big injuries and they're only out for like a week. So if it's a big injury, make it a big thing. And you can even, play with the injury slider to do whatever you want with that. But just the ability to LTIR a player would be nice, especially for teams closer to the cap, of course. And when simulating, forcing me to pause to make a lineup decision makes perfect sense. Don't change that. But once that player is fully healed, I should be able to revert my lines to a previously made preset of lines. This would save so much time, especially when I try to replace a player in all lines, but then for some unknown reason that doesn't affect many of the special teams lines. So I tried simulating into the future to get an injury to a player and then show you an example of that, but honestly, it wasn't giving me any injuries to big players. It was just a super long, I just wasted like basically 10 minutes of my life going through a super slow simulation and watching other injuries happen. But if you've played franchise mode, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You press replace in all lines, and it does not replace in all lines. When I say all lines, I mean all lines, not all lines except 3-man PK and 4-man power play. So that's extremely frustrating. And then when that player is healed, I gotta go back in and change all those lines again. Instead of just pressing one button, for example, I could say revert lines to whatever, preset 1. And then say, oh, preset 1 not available because another player is injured. Okay, well then I gotta go in and fix it. But if I have a fully healthy team, I want to put it to the preset that I had at the beginning of the season. If FIFA can do it with team sheets, why can't I do it with this just lineup of 4 lines, 3 defensive pairs, and 2 goalies? So that's very frustrating. And not necessarily injuries, but still kind of injury related. In simulation, if a player gets a game misconduct, consider adding 1 to 5 game suspensions. I would only want this if it were easier to make line changes, and if there was a slider for how often suspensions happen. But in theory, suspensions should be a consideration of something that should be added to franchise mode. Because if you include game misconduct penalties, why not also include suspensions? And obviously, it's a small hit, he got kicked out, then he got 5 games. Yeah, glitches will happen, but I think it would be a good idea to at least think about adding it. Having said all of that, I now move on to my thoughts regarding transactions. So let's start with trades. The first thing I want to say about trades would be we should be able to trade conditional picks. This is one of those things that I really want to see. We aren't asking for conditions like in the Sean Monahan trade where this happens, but that happens, but then I had previous conditions and XYZ, and you're tied around like SpongeBob. I'm just saying the most basic of basic conditions. Top 10 protected picks. a second that becomes a first if the team wins the cup, etc. A little would go a long way. And of all my non-glitch related suggestions, I think this one is probably the most reasonable. It would be a very simple fix. Again, simple request, simple fix. Just a small condition, nothing crazy. If my team wins the cup, that second becomes a first. Stuff like that. Keeping on trades, I'm also considering the trade deadline minigame. If you've done the trade deadline minigame before, you know that if you make a trade during it, it resets all of your lines when you come out of it. So if I have my lines made a certain way, I make a small trade, a depth player for a 7th round pick, I come out of my trade deadline minigame, I go to my lines, bang, everything's back set to best lines. Again, I gotta waste 10 minutes of my life doing my penalty kill, my shootout lines, etc. All because for some unknown reason, it's a glitch that just redid all your lines. It forces you to have to make your trades before the actual trade deadline, so you don't have to face having to redo all your lines, and it removes the joy of even getting to experience the trade deadline minigame because you never really go in it, just maybe to check things out, but that's about it. Also, when you're in the trade deadline minigame, if you are trying to make a trade and another team sends you an offer, it kicks you out of that trade. I have a whole complex thing going, retain salary, picks for prospects, balancing roster positions and contracts, and then, oh, hey, by the way, I'll give you a second and you give me a first and a prospect. No, I don't want to do that trade, and now I just lost my whole trade that I had going. So please remove the ability to get kicked out of your trades when one is offered to you. You should be able to decline the call or whatever, or maybe even not be able to receive trades while in the trade screen. A big, very, very annoying thing that could and should be fixed ASAP. You can even add other things like you're trading with a rival, they'll want to get more out of you, stuff like that. Division rival, historical rival. There could be a lot of things added to the trades aside from just the, oh, it's accepted or it's declined. It's not a horrible system. I'm not saying this is a big thing that needs to be overhauled ASAP, but it's just something that I've noticed. I'm sure you've noticed as well in your franchise modes. Moving on from trades and now keeping on transactions and moving to contract negotiations. In general, this is where an overhaul would be needed. I'm not necessarily saying go the FIFA route where everything's a big cutscene and negotiation over dinner and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of those cutscenes, but even that would be better than having to solve mysteries sometimes in NHL. Especially in free agency, the formula is basically to overpay a player and you get them. No bonuses, no discussion, no addition of no movement clauses, nothing. And if it's a player that you have control over, more often than not, if you offer them 85% of what they're asking for, they will sign. And if they don't, and they're an RFA, you can just qualify them, and then the next day, clock strikes 12 at midnight on July 1st. Now it's like as if they're a whole new person willing to negotiate with you. So, you know, keeping on July 1st, a July 1st minigame would actually be a great addition and actually solve a lot of the issues. This would involve many improvements, such as those bonuses and stuff, maybe even no movement clause, stuff like that. Also on July 1st, or just in free agency in general, the contracts that some players ask for are just crazy. You'll have random NHLers who are like a 70 overall at 39 years of age wanting like $2 million, while there's an 80 overall willing to take league minimum. Overall, make negotiations feel like negotiations, not just here's the money, are you going to sign it in 2-3 days? No, I'm not. Yes, I am. There has to be more depth than that. And furthermore, when we're talking about the RFAs that you have control over, RFA arbitration should be extremely simple. Just like in MLB The Show, you offer one number, the player offers another, and an arbitrator makes a decision. There is no excuse to have so many RFA holdouts on AI-managed teams. So many good players will just not play for the entirety of a season because the AI GM doesn't know what to do. Moving from just the contract negotiations, moving to the off-season itself. In the off-season, or anytime really, I should be allowed to go over the salary cap by a certain percentage, just like in the real world. Allow me to do what I have to do, but obviously don't let me play a game until I've settled everything and it's all fixed. Not being able to call up or send down players because of the salary cap, and you can only move 3 at a time, and trying to make major changes, it's just more musical chairs. Allow me to do what I have to do as long as I'm not over by the time I'm playing my next game. Furthermore, in the off-season, allow me to see my lines. Why in the world does the edit lines feature or the view lines feature disappear during the off-season? I need to see where players are currently slotted. At the very least, provide a depth chart. And my final point about transactions would be how the AI changes AAVs of players. For example, if a team is under the salary cap, the contracts that the team already has, like for example, Jeff Petry's here on the Canadiens, if the Habs were under the salary cap, Petry is signed for whatever, 4 more years at 6.25. It would now become 4 more years at 6.75 to add 500K to him, 500K to Drouin. Now he's making $6 million, 500K to Dvorak, whatever amount to get the team back to the salary cap floor. I would suggest that if a team is under the salary cap, it should automatically be assigned a free agent player who is on a deal that gets that team to the cap floor. Instead of having now my player, let's say, who was on a 6-year, $9 million contract, now being on a 6-year, $10.5 million contract. This way, the team gets the salary cap floor for the upcoming season, but doesn't handcuff them for future seasons. This isn't fair to teams who get cap hits alleviated when they're over the salary cap, nor for teams who get their cap hits intensified when they're under the cap floor. So that'll be a huge thing to fix moving forward. You know, it's pretty basic right now, salary cap on or off, but it could be a bit more sophisticated than that. And I see that just an automatic player with whatever money value being needed, being added to the team, being a good fix for that. But now as we move away from transactions and towards the end of a player's career, we have retirements and records. So when a player retires, here are 2 things that I suggest. Number 1, there should be an option to have them turn into a coach or scout, whether it be for your team or for other teams. At the very least, make it some sort of attribute. Players with good awareness, players with high poise or longevity, stuff like that. Because right now it's just basically the best players, or sometimes even random good players, not necessarily the very best, but no quote bad players become coaches or scouts. It's always high rated players. No average player really becomes a scout. It's usually the best of the best or one of the miscellaneous best. So something that indicates whether or not they'll turn into a coach or scout, or allowing you to have that option, would be nice. And also an option to retire their number, whether it be for your team or for other teams. Maybe you could even have the option of forcing any team that they played with to retire their number as well. Depends, it could tell you they played for this many years and had this kind of stats with this team. Will this number be retired? And it's up to you. It doesn't pop up for every player, but in the retirement screen, you could go into it and, click on the player and things like that. Just a preliminary idea, because there's a lot of different layers to it about how you would want to approach it and attack it, but jersey retirement in general, with an accompanying ceremony that you can place on the calendar the following year, would be great. And speaking of ceremonies, raising a Stanley Cup or conference or division championship banner would be great, and was also in previous games. But now moving towards the record book, keeping on retirements. The record book, in general, it is glitched. Overall fixes are necessary. I don't know how it hasn't been touched through the entirety of NHL 22 pretty much. There was a patch at one point, but I don't know, it's still broken. It's hard to show you right now because we're at the beginning of a franchise mode, but later on there are inconsistencies, as well as usually the goalie games played column here gets out of whack sooner rather than later. But the biggest thing, as I've seen in my career simulations, is that a player's actual career total and the total that is shown in the record book here for points, assists, goals, whatever, is not the same. It is not consistent, and it makes it hard to actually track your records. I have to go and do it manually myself and look up records, and that doesn't allow the integration of the generated prospects or the histories of other players 20 years in the future, stuff like that. Another thing that would be nice to add when it comes to records would be a record watch notification when one of your players is within a certain range of setting a new franchise or league record. That way you can go into watch or even slow sim when it's around that time. Now, with all that having been said, I move into my final category, which is stuff I don't use but would if it were fixed. Starting with owner mode. Look at this menu, it takes so long. Owner mode, I do not touch owner mode at all. But to get me interested in it, I would say one of the biggest things would be make upgrading stuff actually matter, as opposed to just having like fans being happy if I update the bathrooms. Where are the stakes? That's the thing. If I have to upgrade bathrooms just to upgrade them for the sake of upgrading them, there's no interest there. But how about things like forcing a team to relocate if you've been bad enough and the financial goals haven't been met? You know, you could even turn on or off forced relocation, just like how you can turn on or off automatic relocation and request acceptance. But just an idea. Make the stakes higher. Give me a desire to do this. Because a lot of people who do owner mode also set it to auto owner mode. To have to make the budgets and the incomes and the promotions. But what are the stakes in the end? Why am I doing it? What's it all for? That's the main thing. Is it just that the owner will be happy? Well, if I'm already a good performing team and I don't do the bathrooms, then that's even more frustrating. Oh, well, we won another Stanley Cup, but your parking lot's still level 1. It's, you know, the stakes. It's all about the stakes. Next would be player morale. I personally never touch morale with a 10-foot pole. Having players get upset over losing captaincies that they should have never had. You start the season, you have a random new captain, you take it away from him. I can't believe you stripped me of the captaincy. Okay, all right. Then if they stay out of the lineup for too long, they demand a trade. Even if you hold them out of the lineup due to them having a playable injury because they've been injured long term, you want to wait till they're fully healed. No, you hold them out for a game, bang, trade me. I dropped 5 overall points. I'm furious. Copy-paste conversations that get stale after your first season. Just stuff like that that is pure nightmare fuel and has kept me from turning on morale in years. Without going into too much detail about what it would need to be fixed, because personally I just don't like it that much. It would take a huge sophisticated system, banks of different conversations, answers, different permutations of players mixing together. Now it's a very basic system. Neutral, leader, if I don't play, I'm not happy. It would take a huge effort to change it, and I would rather EA focus their efforts elsewhere. So I'm not really offering much help. I'm just telling you what I don't like about it and why I still don't use it. You know, it's just, we need to keep such volatile changes from happening. That's the main thing. And even if you don't overhaul the system, just make less volatile changes. Like, don't change the captaincies. Don't make them angry about all these things before. If it's before the preseason even starts, don't make them get angry about stuff. I'll keep it there. But another thing I don't use is expansion mode, aka playing with a 33rd NHL team. I don't see this as broken, but one suggestion that came up surrounding it would be being able to control the year in which an expansion team enters the league. Because right now you can only have Team 33 come into the league for 2022-23 in NHL 23. But why can't I create a team and have it come in, say, 2025-26, as opposed to only having to have it right now? Maybe even a 33rd team in 2025-26, a 34th team 3 years after that. Stuff like that has been involved in other games, but is pretty limited in NHL 22-23, where it's just make a team and put them in or don't put them in, but regardless, it's either going to be now or never, basically. So that was a lot of things that I had to say. It was over 3,000 words that I'd written down for myself. I threw out a lot of thoughts, some of them more imperative than others, like I said, some on the side of this has to happen, some just more quality of life, some just for fun. But in conclusion, many, if not all, of these suggestions already exist. NBA 2K, MLB The Show, FIFA. In some cases, the things that I've suggested, as I said at the beginning of this video, have been around for years, even more than a decade. So there's no excuse to not have the majority of these. Some of these were even already in past games, but were removed for some unknown reason. So EA, at least tell us why they're being removed if you do remove them. The lack of communication is another huge thing to fix in and of itself. Aside from franchise mode, just the communication around things being added or removed. Headed into NHL 23, we know that there will be much more customizability. You can make a league that includes between 6 and 48 teams. That'll be a blast. You can control things like the salary cap going up and down. That's great. I like the customizability, but allow me to do anything I want, basically. If I want to change a player's attributes or overalls or whatever, why can I not do that, but I can change his salary? It's like you're kind of just giving me some, but not giving me everything. Like, but who does it hurt in the end? It's just me in my basement playing franchise mode. It's not like there's a world championship of franchise mode and I'm going to be breaking the leaderboards. But that basically wraps up all of my thoughts. I know it wasn't a great video in terms of visual effects. I wasn't showing a lot, just going through franchise mode here a little bit. But we went through some of the the transactions, scouting. It works. Like, scouting, could it be overhauled in a whole new way? Yes, it could. But at the same time, it's still a system that works. If I scout the player, more often than not, they get uncovered. So at least it's not something I'm going to complain about too much just yet. The player search is a great feature. I like being able to look at the contracts of other teams, pending free agents, stuff like that. Heading into NHL 23, I hope that the edit strategies will actually have an impact on simulation. As well as one last thing I'd throw in is that progress reports. This is also a bit of a glitch. Whenever you scroll, it shows the X factors of the players above them. So for example, Nick Suzuki right here shows the X factors of Carey Price, who's right above him. So that's a glitch that, hopefully would be fixed. And I saved the best for last. I'm not sure where it kind of falls, so I put it at the end of this video. It is the biggest glitch in franchise mode by far. It's not really the franchise mode itself, but it's more of a game thing. When it comes to the save files, and if you've played franchise mode, you know this. Save files just disappear out of nowhere. It's been well documented, and I've spoken about this a lot before, so I won't go too deeply into it. But just to say that if you have one or two, or if you have basically more than one franchise mode going, two or more, there is a risk that one of them could get erased. If you open one of them too many times and it makes backup 2, backup 3, you delete, they keep getting remade. It will save over your other franchise modes without telling you, hey, by the way, like, which one do you want to delete because you have too many? Already that's crazy. I should be able to have like 100. If I have a terabyte of storage, I shouldn't be having to save over files. But at the very least, tell me which ones do I want to delete. But no, oh great, I have 5 of the same franchise mode on the same date of saving, but my other 1 or 2 franchise modes have now disappeared forever. To say that this is extremely frustrating would be a huge understatement, and it has to be fixed. You might say, oh, well, just turn the autosave off. But then the downside of that is now maybe it could glitch and freeze, and if it's not auto-saved and I did a whole season without saving, then I just lost that season as well. Can there not be some sort of middle ground here? That is probably the biggest thing that I would love to see change. Just if that got changed and nothing else, I'd at least be a little content. But that pretty much concludes all of my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, for my ultimate wish list for NHL 23 franchise mode, aka everything wrong with franchise mode. But again, I don't mean to complain. I love franchise mode. There's just a few things, like I said, from quality of life changes to the big changes, and there are some that are more necessary to see ASAP than others. A GM tracker, not playing musical chairs with the head coaches, being able to edit your players, adding conditions when trading draft picks, little things like that would be great. That's really my condensed ultimate wish list for NHL 23 in a tempered reality. But in a perfect world, everything that I just said in this video would be done. Obviously, not going to happen, but hopefully over the next few years, they will, one by one, hopefully start to happen a bit more. And in a perfect world, the mode that we all love will get better with every new game. So I'll close it out there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for upcoming NHL 23 franchise mode content, as well as career simulations, franchise simulations, and much more, as we will soon be moving into NHL 23 content. Still wrapping up NHL 22 if you're watching this before 23 has dropped, our Flyers franchise mode, still doing career simulations and other content related to the real world of hockey. So if you enjoyed this and you're looking forward to more NHL 23 content coming soon, be sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of it. If you love franchise mode, leave a like and a comment here on YouTube or over on the Discord server, link in the description, with your thoughts on what franchise mode needs, what did I hit the nail on the head of, what did I forget, possibly something that you've seen as well in your franchise modes. I'd love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and I will leave you there. So once again, thank you for taking the time to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the next one.